Disclaimer: the views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent. Listener discretion is advised. Thanatophobia is an extreme fear of death or the dying process. You might be scared of your own death or the death of a loved one. Usually, the root cause or symptom of this fear comes from the fact that nobody on this planet can define exactly what happens after we die. This topic in particular is an anxiety that I have struggled with my entire life, and after the year I had last year, I thought it best to finally confront it. In this episode, I invite back my guests, Mike Richey from Charm City Paranormal and medium Jacque Hilbrich, and we have a discussion on this topic in particular. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Caught on the Mic. So this is going to sound like a start of a joke. Three people walk into a bar. But we're not walking into a bar. Instead, we're walking into a podcast recording, a paranormal expert, a medium, and some guy that has a lot of opinions about things, but has no business having opinions about things. I want to welcome back my friend Mike Richey from Charm City Paranormal and Jacque Hilbrich. She is a psychic, a medium, clairvoyant, aura reader, Jackie of all trades. Isn't that what you said last time we recorded together?
That is what I said. I love the throwback. Yeah, that's exactly.
So we are going to tackle a topic that admittedly for me is very uncomfortable for me. I have not been terribly transparent about this before, but I have the most severe sense of death anxiety. And that's because I exist on this plane where I cite myself as being an agnostic theist. I believe that there's something after we die. I just don't feel like as a mortal, I have the capability to define it. That's why I thought this episode would be really interesting for my listeners, because Mike, having his experience doing paranormal investigations, and the profound things that Jackie was able to uncover on that last episode with me, I thought this would be a great three-way conversation. How you guys doing?
Great. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, really good. I'm excited.
Well, I'm excited to have you. So let's open it up, and let's just get to the big question. Mike, for you specifically, what do you think happens after a person dies?
Truthfully, even after 4 years of doing this, I still have not been able to come up with a solid definition because it's always changing. The perception and the ideas of it are constantly changing for me. I'm always learning new things when I go out in the field and investigate. So it's always changing. I mean, ultimately, I think that there is a next step after this. I think that we come here to experience things in order to gain knowledge for our souls and to move into the next chapter, whether that be reincarnation, whether that be nothing at all, as people claim it to be. I mean, it's such a broad topic. It's so hard to just pinpoint that to one thing, you know?
Right. Yeah. You've had quite a bit of experience in 4 years of investigations. Has your perception of what a spirit is changed in that 4 years of time?
Absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt in my mind. When I started doing this, I was really only accustomed to human spirits and dealing with human energies, people that have passed on. And since starting, I've learned of non-human things. I've learned of things that have been here as long as time itself. I've just learned of so many different types of energy that exist around us and with us. It's incredible.
Yes. So for you, same question, same concept, same philosophy, Jackie. Like, what is your perception of what happens after a person dies?
Well, it's interesting because I think that I kind of agree with Mike. As you're in this work and you're really going about being immersed in this field, um, I feel like my perception of death has changed so much, and you just have to be kind of flexible with what you believe when you're experiencing new things all the time. But I do believe that because of the work that I've done as a medium, there's definitely something that happens after we die. I don't think it's just lights out forever and that's it. I do think that there's the possibility of reincarnation, especially because so many different like religions talk about reincarnation in a different way. So I feel like, these religions that aren't connected, how are they all coming to a similar conclusion? I think that's really interesting. So I'm open to having my idea of death sort of change, but I do believe that there is something that happens after we die. I do also believe that we are here to learn mostly, how to evolve ourselves, how to forgive, how to love people, how to cultivate compassion in a really, really tense environment on Earth where we're constantly going through, struggles or battles or, the Buddhists say like suffering. So I think that it's just one big school. And I'll just say, I believe there's more than what we know. And I also believe that we're not really meant to figure out exactly what happens. I think it's meant to remain a mystery for forever.
I don't want to bring the concept of religion to the fold because that's not something I talk about on my show. I'm very transparent about that. I respect anybody's belief structure one way or the other, whether they choose to believe that or not. But it is kind of this omniscient presence, no matter what culture you're a part of, that there is some sort of spiritual structure behind that. What do you guys think was the root of that? Like, is it that culture's experience? Diving into the paranormal investigation side, Mike, and then kind of diving into the work that you do, Jackie, what are your personal opinions as far as how that structure comes to play, no matter what culture you're a part of?
I think for me personally, the spiritual hierarchy is very real. I think it exists in the same way that we have social structure and hierarchy in the real world and the physical world, I should say. The physical world essentially mirrors the spirit world as far as, who's in charge of what, who is doing what, where, when, and why. It's, from my experience, very similar. You have the lower level energies that are, frustrated, angry, kind of darker, grayer energies that like to feed off of negative emotions, fear, anxiety, dread, things like that. And then as you kind of move up the ladder, you have people that have passed on and maybe they don't know that they passed on, but it's kind of neutral. Some people have passed away and they know that they're gone and they choose to stay behind for various reasons, watching out for family, they like the place, whatever the case may be. And as you move up, it moves into non-human entities, and that structure has been discussed throughout all types of religion for all of mankind, of all of time. Like Jackie was saying, there's all of these structures and different types of religion, but they all sort of tell the same story.
Right.
So it's hard to, like, I get it. People have their religious preferences and they're entitled to have that as such. It's just when you step back and look at it from an unbiased perspective and you look at all of the religions and how all of them tell the same story, more or less, it's like there's got to be some structure to this. It's not just, I guess you could say, like organized chaos.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I remember my first year of college, I took both a Western civilization class and a world religions class, and you either come out of that class believing like, I don't know what to believe, but there's something out there, or you come out of that class flat out atheist, because some people have that belief that, the spiritual structure was set up so people could be controlled as a form of government, basically to keep morals in line and standards in line.
I think that when you look back, thousands of years ago when this stuff kind of started popping up, we were so much more in touch with the natural world and the spirit world, and we're more in sort of an observer role than we are now. I think we have lots of distractions now, which has kind of pulled us away from the spirit world in general and being aware of things that people were more aware of back then. But I do feel like there has to be something that we collectively experienced as humankind for all of these religions to agree that there is reincarnation or that there is some sort of higher power. And I feel like there's a little bit of truth in every belief system, but I do think that along the way, things got muddied. That's kind of, I feel like most people kind of think that at
Yeah.
some point, like there's mistranslations or whatever. So I just think it's interesting, we've become a little bit more detached as a society from the spirit world and more focused on, money and the physical world and what we have, and have lost a little bit of that touch with the spirit world. But I do think that there had to have been some sort of collective experience that these different groups went through to have that foundation built.
With the end result for all of us being pretty much the same, how do we influence ourselves, or how does the presence of spirits influence us to live better tomorrow? And do spirits being on our physical realm influence us in that way? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
No, I think it makes sense.
that's perfect. No, I'm thinking like you were talking about how energy has influence on our lives and the decisions that we make and everything that goes on around us. And I never realized that until I got into the paranormal and I actually started digging more into the history of these locations, these people's lives that would come through. And I noticed a pattern with a lot of them, with an exception of like a handful of spirits that I've encountered since doing this, literally 3 or 4. Almost all of them stay behind for one reason or another, and it's either they're afraid because they don't know what waits on the other side, or they're not done being here. They don't want to leave yet. They're not ready to go for whatever reason. And over time, I realized that with those two being the most common themes, it just makes you think, how am I spending my time? What am I doing with myself? How am I carrying myself? How am I treating others around me? It just puts so many common things into such a deeper perspective that you probably would have never thought about otherwise had you chosen not to engage or interact with this stuff. Because I didn't, it's all things that we think about, how can I do this better? How can I be a better person? Whatever. But I feel like when you get into the paranormal and you start digging into these stories of these children that are staying behind because they're looking for their family, or this, grieving mother that's looking for their family, or this father who didn't get to finish this project and all these things that he wanted to do and he just didn't get to do it because he didn't have time. And it just makes you think, like, I really need to be careful about how I spend my time, how I carry myself, the energy that I put out into the world, and the energy that I want to get back as well. And it's on, for me personally, just such a deeper level than before I got into it.
I agree. I was going to say, even with people that you've lost, family members or friends or just people that you're really close with, when you get hit with that grief, I feel like it does something. It's almost like it throws you into a mini spiritual awakening where you become more aware and cognizant of, like what Mike was saying, how you're spending your time, what energy you're putting out into the world, the forgiveness aspect, am I really spending my time and spending my life how I want to spend my life, or am I worried about what other people think? I think there's a lot to come from grief, specifically when it hits so close to you. But yeah, even doing house cleansings and things, there's usually some sort of fear of judgment that these people are worried about. So that's, the flip side of the spirituality and religion and things like that, is that people don't really know what's going to happen, and they're fearing that they're going to be judged. And so when I've done house cleansings, usually you go in and you just have to explain, like, you're going to be okay. You're going to be fine. When you're ready to go, you're ready to go. And usually you bring in some sort of family member that's already crossed over to come back to get them. At least for the house cleansings that I've done, that's the way that my guides and I have kind of set things up, where if I'm working with, a man that's passed, I'll bring through his mom or somebody that he was close with. I'll usually ask, who do you want to help you, cross over? And they'll tell me a relative, they'll tell me a friend. So it's very interesting what being so close to loss will do to us. I feel like it makes us more cognizant as we go throughout our daily lives.
Wow. So I have a few things I want to point out here. First of all, some of the things that both of you discussed are so parallel to one another. They're also parallel to the tenets of Hinduism and Buddhism, all about enlightenment and using spiritual energy to elevate a higher self while you are in a physical state here on this planet, which is great. I mean, it wasn't my intended result by asking that question by any means, but hey, we ended up there. The other thing I wanted to point out is, forgive me for not really thinking about this before we put this episode together. I really think it's great that Mike has these vantage points that I expected Jacque to share, from him investigating physical locations and Jacque experiencing true one-on-one contact for other people. It's great. It's absolutely great. So just fun shit I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, we got some good parallels going on here.
Let's talk a little bit about science fiction and science fact catching up to each other. Do you guys feel that the world is in a place where they're a little bit more open-minded to the spiritual side of life? Let's throw out UFOs and stuff. We know everybody's finally starting to admit that shit's real. But but is the world kind of opening up to the idea that there is an afterlife and there is a spiritual realm outside of the physical one?
I personally think so. I have noticed a very big shift since 2020. A lot of people going through a period of isolation opened them up more to spiritual topics, and people had to really sit with themselves. So ever since then, I have specifically noticed that way more people are open to energy and mediums and what happens after we die. But I just thought it was interesting that, like, as soon as people were forced to sit with themselves, it was almost like this huge awakening happened on like a global scale. I don't know if either of you have noticed that either, but.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was the same for me. I've kind of dabbled in spirituality growing up and throughout my early into late teens and young adult, but like Jacque said, it didn't really hit me until I was given that period of forced isolation, that I had to really sit with it and think about it and approach it from an open-minded angle as well as like a rational mind. And yeah, in the last 5 years or so, it just seems like there's this new age spiritualism movement. And I think a lot of it also has to do with the influence that's online and in media.
Right.
Because you have these huge internet influences that millions and millions of people watch that are now dedicated to making paranormal content or just strange supernatural content. And that's going to intrigue a lot of people in their audience. So in turn, that's just going to spread like wildfire. I mean, if you can convince 5 people to go tell 5 people something, it's just going to endlessly spread forever, eventually reaching enough people to have an influential impact. So yeah, all these people getting into it and the isolation, the combination of isolation. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. What's really ironic about the whole thing is that, yes, our attention is a lot more divided than it used to be simultaneously. Like, there are very few remnants of a monoculture left. Like, the best example just happened this last Sunday was the Super Bowl, like where everybody's sitting at home, the collective consciousness is all focused on the same thing. Things like that don't happen as frequently anymore. Not everybody's at home watching their Grammys. Not everybody's watching the season finale of this show or that show, because streaming and internet has like spread our attention so far. So for a spiritual awakening to occur, and in the way that you described, Mike, I think is pretty incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, as time goes on and these new paranormal creators, content creators, or people who have spiritual connections such as mediums, psychics, things of that nature continue to grow on platforms, it's going to continue to spread and become very normal. I mean, especially amongst my generation. I'm an older millennial, so it's us and I feel like Gen X are like very open to that kind of stuff. Yeah. And it's just going to further influence the younger generations further to be open to it as well. I mean, it all just goes back on the beginning of this topic. What happens to us after we die? And I feel like as time goes on and people become more open-minded and accepting of all different kinds of things in the physical world, there's no reason why I wouldn't open up their spiritual mind as well to be curious about that kind of stuff.
Right. So we've all watched movies. We've all seen The Matrix. There's the theory that humans are just walking batteries, right? A few years ago, and we were talking about this before we started recording, just as a cheat for the audience. A few years ago, Elon Musk, think of him what you will, you are totally entitled to your opinion, was on the Joe Rogan podcast. Think of him what you will, you're entitled to your opinion. And it was his first appearance on Rogan's podcast, and he was talking about something called Neuralink. It's basically an implant that is placed in your brain that can do things like transmit what you're thinking and assist with motor control. That just got launched for the first human has had it implanted in them just this last 3 months, I believe. One of the things that Elon pushed forward on that Rogan episode was that this could be a way to transmit consciousness beyond death. What are your opinions on that?
Honestly, it freaks me out to think about a little bit.
Yeah.
I will say, it reminds me of the Black Mirror episode that we kind of talked about too, San Junipero, where that's the debate of that episode. Is one of the main characters is like, am I going to upload? Am I going to just let myself pass normally? And I think it really boils down to, can we really transfer someone's soul? Because isn't that kind of what we're talking about? So that whole conversation is really interesting. Will Neuralink really work? And if it does, what aspect of our soul are we actually transferring? Or is it brainwaves? Is it just a consciousness thing? Like, where's the line with that? That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah. And what if you don't fully download?
Yeah, right. What if you only have bits and pieces or something? Exactly.
Yeah, and I feel like it's going to take, by the time it does get anywhere, at least that could be considered like a viable tool for humanity, I don't think any of us are going to be around, or even like we're going to be too old to care about it by then. But I don't know, like part of me is extremely fascinated by it, just coming from an IT background and being a huge tech nerd. I love tech. So when I heard about it initially, I was like, oh, this is kind of sick. But then I started thinking about it more, and I started thinking about how it just completely goes against the laws of mortality and sort of throws a wrench in the idea of being born, living a life, dying, and moving on. It's like, it just kind of shows you how obsessed and how locked into the physical world that we are as a species, to even want to consider living forever.
Right.
At some point, like, you're going to get tired. you're going to want to lay down. And you're not going to be able to if you're a battery powered AI or however they plan on doing it. So cool idea, but just leave it to the movies, please. Can we just watch it on a big silver screen and not live it?
Well, since we're going to sensationalize the movie aspect of things, I want to ask your opinions about something else. The spiritual realm as it applies to our sleep state. I have long believed that there is something that happens when we sleep that doesn't happen when we're awake. Whether it is communicating with people that have moved on, communicating with people that are across the country from you, like something happens when we're asleep that is not just limited to our physical bodies. What do you two believe as far as that goes?
Honestly, I think we enter in this sort of like meditative state, this restful state that can be achieved while awake with a lot of practice and a lot of dedication. But I don't know, it's almost like our soul or our consciousness sort of separates and does its own thing while our physical body is resting. If you look at people who have vivid dreams or lucid dreams who can control their dream states and they know that they're dreaming. I've done this twice, ever. It was the coolest shit I've ever done in my entire life. Vivid dreaming is very surreal if you know how to do it properly. And it felt like the physical world. It felt like life, but just there was some layer of mystery or misunderstanding in there that like it's hard to explain, that my brain couldn't comprehend it. And despite seeing and hearing and feeling things that you know are otherworldly or otherwise on a non-existent plane and feeling normal with it, for me, it just feels normal. Like I don't really get scared of my dreams or the things that I experience in them, even if they are night terrors at times. Like it's just normal. It's a normal way to experience things for me. And I think that detachment it should be some form of confirmation that something continues after this. I mean, if the lights can go off for 6, 8, 10 hours and you go off into this fantasy land or this new world, or you're seeing relatives that have passed on, there's got to be something there in the unconscious mind that creates that or makes it a reality for us. And it's just, I don't know, it's so hard to understand it. It's so hard to wrap your brain around it.
Yeah, so it's my belief that we do have different planes of existence. And so when we enter into a sleep state, we can enter the astral plane through our energetic body or our astral body. And I did a lot of dream work when I first started my spiritual journey, because I was obsessed with finding proof for myself that this stuff was real. So I would hear about spirit guides or people working with their, angelic teams or whoever. And I was like, I have to see it to believe it. I got to see you guys to believe that you're actually there. So I got really good at lucid dreaming and becoming conscious in my dreams. And I would become conscious and ask my guides to come through in my dreams to introduce themselves. And they did. I met my entire spirit guide team in my dreams. So it's a really cool way to experience that spiritual, reality when you are sleeping. It definitely takes practice. But when you get the hang of it, I mean, it's unlike anything that we can experience here, obviously. And, there are times when I'll have dreams where I feel like I'm living a whole other life. And then I'll come back to this one and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to wake up and go to work today. Or I have to go, I got to go put laundry in. Like, oh my God, but I was just off, gallivanting around this planet or something. So I think it's a cool concept to kind of talk about. Did you have an experience with that?
I did. I will get to that here in just a moment. I've had several. Actually, I've got 2 stories. I'll just tell them. Okay, I got 2 stories in particular that you'll never believe if I tell them to you. But when I was college age. It was my first or second year of college. I had a friend that was in a horrible, horrible, horrible car accident. We lived in a small town in Iowa. It was so bad that it was reported that he had passed away. He was life flighted to the next big city, but he had passed away. It was reported to all of us. All my friends came over. Everybody was just like in tears, besides themselves over this whole thing. I went to sleep that night. I don't know how I fell asleep that night, maybe because of emotional exhaustion. He came to me in my dream and he said, Mike, I'm fine. I'm okay. And he goes, I'm alive. I'm okay. I went into work the next day. We worked together. Everybody's huddled around. They're sharing the information. And then it came out that he was fine. He not like alive. He'd had what was called a cerebral hemorrhage. He was comatose for a long period of time, but he actually came to me in my dream and told me he was okay.
Okay, psychic. Okay, psychic, coming from my brand. That's amazing.
So that was one thing. And then I had one just 2 nights ago, and this is the one kind of I hinted at whenever we were texting earlier, and it was the weirdest thing. I can't define it. I can't put my finger on it, but I was having this dream where I was being referred to as an archangel. Like I had died. I had passed on in this dream, and I was being referred to as an archangel, and my job was a record keeper. I was keeping records in the afterlife, and I was keeping people grouped together based in the spiritual realm and this, that, and the other thing. Weirdest shit ever, right?
Wait, have you heard of the Akashic Records?
Okay, well, this is where it gets weirder. So, like, I'm weirded out by this dream. Actually, it was yesterday morning that I woke up because it was the day after Super Bowl, because there was some weird, like, I had this weird, like, helmet thing on in this dream, too. So, I'm just scrolling TikTok, right? And this thing comes up today and it says, woman dies, learns we sign soul contracts before coming to Earth. She died and experienced a near-death experience. This type of experience happens when the soul leaves the body, and there are over 9 million cases of NDEs across the world. Blah, blah, blah. After being sick, what she experienced after this is life-changing. She explains that we live in soul clusters on the other side and sign contracts detailing what we are coming to Earth to accomplish. So I decided, okay, man, that's kind of weird that came out, because I actually had a dream about that. So I decided to look up archangels, and I found, of course, the case of the Archangel Michael, who is the chief of angels and archangels. So basically like the guy that's in charge. So it's like that would explain the records. I don't know. It was the weirdest shit. I'm still weirded out by it.
That's crazy, but also makes sense to me. And also, that could be a couple of different things. Like, that could be a sign for you to dive more into archangels and Archangel Michael. But also, I believe that spirit guides, when we die, we have the opportunity to either become a spirit guide for somebody on Earth to help them go through similar things that we've gone through while we were living. I know that there are other types of, spirits and spirit guides and things like that, but I do believe we have the choice to come back and help people as well. So I wonder if you were getting like a little taste of that or something. Very cool.
Super interesting. I can never remember my dreams, so I'm fascinated that you had such a vivid recollection of that.
Me neither. That's the other weird part of it, is like I was able to I'm still able to visually recall elements of the dream, like things that I was wearing, the coloring of my surroundings. I mean, the coloring of my surroundings, it looked like the movie 300. I'm not gonna lie. Cool. But yeah, right. But it was, like a lot of golden hues and such, but it was the weirdest damn thing. I've been trying to make sense of it since. If you guys know of any dream interpreters that want to do a podcast, I might know a guy I can hook them up with, but
amazing. Also crazy that your friend came to you and told you that he was fine, because that's another thing that happens is when we're connected in that realm, we can also have past loved ones come visit us. And so it's going to be a dream that's more vivid and feels more real than any other type of dream that you have when you're connecting to like another soul in either living or past. So cool.
Well, that's a great segue because connecting to more of the dark side of it, are you both familiar with the phenomenon of sleep paralysis and sleep demons?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Speak to it, Mike.
I've only experienced it once personally, and I know that it usually is the onset of extreme stress, is what most people talk about. I know that I was going through a really rough period of my life, but I was also investigating a very heavy location with a lot of non-human things residing on the property, and I was going there a lot over the course of many months. I don't know if that has any correlation with the sleep paralysis, but the one time I experienced it, I laid down for a nap at like 6:30 p.m. and I woke up at a little after 8 p.m. The TV was still on, it was the only light in the room, and I remember trying to sit up, and I got maybe like 4 or 5 inches off the bed, and then I looked around and I couldn't continue up anymore. So I just kind of laid back down, and I looked down at my feet, and I see this black smoke start to rise up near my feet. So I closed my eyes, maybe 5 or 10 seconds, open them, try to get up again. It's the same thing. I can't get past like 4 or 5 inches without falling back down. And I still don't know if it was a dream or not, because I remember opening my eyes. I remember seeing the TV on. It was Brooklyn Nine-Nine that was playing in the background. And I remember looking around my room and seeing everything exactly as it should be. Like, I felt awake. I could feel physically in my body. I didn't feel like a dream. I didn't feel floaty, if that makes sense. And I did this 3 or 4 times, and every time I would open my eyes to try and sit back up, the smoke would get closer. And it eventually just got in my face and sort of hovered there for a minute. And it didn't have any features. There wasn't a face or anything. It was just black smoke. And the 4th or 5th time that I laid back down, I actually woke up that time, and it was finally gone. But I couldn't move my body from the neck down. Like, I would try to sit up, and I guess if you could just picture what it feels like to have your leg fall asleep, but my entire body felt like that. So, absolutely terrifying. Don't know why it happened. Don't know the cause of that, truthfully. If it is a spiritual thing, it's very real. I've experienced it. It's scary as hell.
Yeah, so just one comment about that is when we are going to sleep, obviously your physical body is going to fall asleep first, but then when your astral body wakes up or becomes conscious and your physical body is asleep, sometimes people will become aware before they're actually fully out of their body, and that's what people believe causes sleep paralysis, where you're having that sort of separation of the physical and energetic bodies, but it's not fully complete yet. You wake up in the process of it, and it can startle people. But what's interesting is I have heard a lot of people talk about, sleep paralysis in regards to like demons and things like that. I've never experienced anything like that before, but I mean, when you're thinking about the astral plane, that is the lowest level of the planes of existence. So when you're looking at, lower level entities, that is where they can pop up. One thing that I usually do is if I find myself in sleep paralysis because I cannot fall asleep on my back, or I will be immediately in sleep paralysis because I lucid dream often, call your spirit guides to pull you out of it, or call your spirit guides for protection, because you're able to think, you're able to, even if you can't move, you can still cognizantly, ask them to do things. So that's what I do to pull me out of sleep paralysis, is ask them to pull you out of it or ask them for protection. If you notice anything creepy is going on, like there's a black smoke or somebody in the middle of the room or something like that, ask them for protection. They'll answer.
I've experienced like 3 or 4 times, and I can vividly remember every time that it's happened. And it is a sense of fear unlike anything I have ever experienced. I have actually seen only once of like the handful of times it's happened to me, have I actually seen an entity, and it was like just a white face with like black X's across their eye. It was the weirdest shit ever, but man, I got weird stories for days, guys.
Love it.
I'm here for them.
but no, there was one time where it happened, and it was actually within a 6-month window of the first time it happened, where I put on music. I laid down to kind of get myself in a relaxed and meditative state, and I remember the music still playing. Like, I remember where it was at in the song, the whole 9 yards. Weirdest shit ever. If you were to take a step back and sum your perception of how a person experiences life and then experiences the afterlife, how would you sum it up in a short sentence?
I would say that as you're going about your journey, you will have moments where you go into sort of a little bit of a spiritual awakening, and you'll know it's happening because you'll be thrown into a hard time that makes you question your beliefs or makes you want to dive into what happens after we die, or makes you want to dive into spiritual topics. And my advice is just go with it. If you feel the push to start to explore those things, then go with it. In regards to how it affects us when we get to the end, I feel like it's just be as present as you possibly can be right here, right now. We think about the past a lot. We think about the future a lot. And in doing that, we're really sacrificing the here and now moment when we're connecting with people, when we're cultivating relationships with people. And that is really what matters, is our relationships with people and being able to experience life first and foremost as a human being with emotions. But also, if you feel the push to dive into spirituality, like, go for it. That's just another little thing that we're able to kind of go into.
I think based on the things that I've seen, life is meant to be experienced in all aspects, in every facet, the good, the bad, the ugly, the in-between. And it's all meant for the soul to have these experiences. I think that we come to the physical world and live these physical lives so that the soul can experience itself in the physical form. And we take this knowledge with us once we're gone, and carry it off into the next generation of souls that come, or we either stay behind as guides, like Jackie was saying. I feel like it's just an endless pursuit of knowledge and experience, and just carrying that knowledge and that experience forever. The whole point of existence is to experience itself in every which way.
Yes. I love that.
So
I love that.
Way one-upped me on that answer.
Sorry.
Well, in the interest of talking about the here and now, using Jackie's words, let's talk about what you guys have going on right now and what your 2024 looks like. Mike, we're going to start with you. Let's talk about what's happening with Charm City Paranormal and what you're doing right now.
Yeah, we actually just started working with a company to get our stuff on Plex TV. They just recently launched a channel called Beyond Paranormal, and our stuff is streaming on there Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. That's been super exciting, seeing my work on TV. And there's a couple other media companies that we've actually started working with that once they announce it, I can announce it. But
Right.
aggressively expanding, basically. My goal this year is to just aggressively expand and try to grow this even bigger than it already is. I want to take it to the moon.
Man, you're going to franchise Charm City in Lincoln, Nebraska and Chicago, Illinois?
Hey.
I mean, maybe. So those are two good places to start.
How about for you, Jackie? Why don't you tell us what's going on with you and give us a little insight to 2024? What has Spirit been telling you about this year?
Sure. So for me personally, I'm working mostly with one-on-one mentorships this year. I'm also hoping to launch a couple of classes more towards the middle of the year. So that should be up around July is my plan. For 2024, I mean, I don't know if either of you pay attention to astrology at all or anything like that, but we are moving into the beginning of a 20-year cycle with Pluto in Aquarius, which is about transformation. It's about death, rebirth, just kind of like very, it's just about lots of changes happening to our infrastructure with specifically, I think, the United States. So I think we are in the foundation year of seeing where that's going to be pushed over the next 20 years. And it should be interesting. But this year is the year to just build the foundation, keep moving forward. And it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Jackie, I am going to take the most optimistic parts of what you just said and keep that with me, because I'm going to tell you what, I am scared shitless right now about everything that's going to happen this year. I don't like either one of our choices for presidential candidates. I think I speak for most of America. I hate the fact that we are having 2020 parallels happen all over again. I mean, Chiefs and the 49ers both in the Super Bowl again. Oh my. If March 15th, if the world shuts down March 15th, fuck it, guys, I'm out.
I think we may be getting a redo for our timeline.
See, that's it. That's the optimistic point of view that I want to hear. I love it.
I sure hope so. I really hope so, guys.
I got to tell you, one of my most favorite things about this podcasting endeavor is getting to connect with people like you and being able to call you friends now and getting to connect the two of you as well. I hope, if not anything else comes from this episode, that maybe you two have an opportunity to work together in the future. I really enjoyed having this conversation with the two of you. I enjoy knowing the both of you. Thank you once again for gracing Caught on the Mic with your presence the second time. You guys are a rare club, the Two Timers Club. I think there's only two other people that have that distinction.
That's right. Thanks, Mike. We love it.
Hell yeah.
Thank you, guys. The world's a much better place with the both of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you so much for having us.
What a great conversation. It sounds like big things are happening for Charm City Paranormal. So if you are not following them on social media yet, make sure you give them a follow. You can seek Jackie out at Ethereal Jack on Instagram. Give her a follow. I know she will appreciate it. Guys, what a great episode. While you're being generous with the follows, make sure you are following Caught on the Mic on all social media platforms. Visit me, www.caughtonthemic.com. Email me, caughtonthemic@gmail.com. It is always a pleasure hearing from you. Whatever podcast app you are using right now to listen to this episode, make sure you give Caught on the Mic the top rating that you can. It helps push us out to new subscribers. This has been Caught on the Mic with Michael Clark. I'm Michael Clark. Until next time, thank you.